DC Fire and EMS working to get inside that condominium building along with the retail there. That water, if you can see it right there on the ground, really flowing still pretty quickly.
Pouring out of the building.
It's pouring out of the building. Okay, so we got James telling me, James Hash, our photojournalist, making the very good observation that water is pouring out of the building. So you have to, I mean, we'll have to figure out exactly how high the water was. You can actually see some sort of a container floating down Rhode Island Avenue here in Northeast. Really a surreal scene. But as they try to open up these doors and let the water flow out, so they can start what is going to be a long recovery process here. But as the flashing lights continue, as the sirens go off in the distance, this section has come to a complete standstill right now. Again, we have not seen any people thus far inside those cars. Thankfully, we believe that they were brought to safety before we got here. And again, just pointing out, this water is receding. It's receding quickly. That's good news. Guys, in the live shot that we started, I was telling you about the receding water. Right over there, there was water within this live shot, and now it's already gone down. So this is a quickly developing situation in which these floodwaters that came and just whooshed through this entire area and caught everybody on guard now seems to be almost going away just as quickly. Yeah, sure.
Yeah, so you were looking at District Dogs, and if you can ask James to pan back over to District Dogs, we've done considerable reporting about this business in particular, which back in 2022, I'm looking at some of our previous reporting, flooded maybe 3 times in a month. So this area has really been prone to flooding. And then there was the whole Northwest Boundary Tunnel that was supposed to be done earlier this year that was supposed to help alleviate some of this. Are you hearing anything about the status of that and in particular how District Dog is doing?
I don't, but I'm going to try and walk over here. I'm not going to try and surprise anybody, but if anybody who's a resident here, we're live on WUSA 9, can tell me what's going on. Are you guys from inside the building?
No comments.
Oh, you're from District Dogs.
Yeah.
Our anchor Leslie was just talking. You guys have had problems with flooding.
Later.
Okay, all right, well, I wish you the best. Obviously, I didn't see his shirt as somebody who was with District Dogs.
Eric,
so that flooding issues that you have been...
What are those barriers set up in front of the business? It's almost like they saw this coming, if I'm seeing those correctly. I saw sandbags and some sort of barrier system.
Right, I'm going to have to guess because the supervisors here are way too busy, I think, to talk to me right now. But it certainly seems like, and James is obviously giving you a different visual right now inside what's going on inside District Dogs as they try to. Oh wow, it does not look good in there at all. Obviously, you can tell now. You can see that water line, James. Why don't you check out the water line, which is about shoulder height to head high down there. So you're talking about 5 to 6 feet at least. The water was high inside this location. Obviously, the damage here is just going to be devastating. Longo, when you're talking about the barricades outside, I think it's pretty clear that this was an attempt to try and keep some of that water from flooding into this business. But I think that Mother Nature just won this round, as you can see, because we're watching the DC Fire and EMS personnel inside right now. And I mean, they still have water up to their ankles or higher as they try to sift through.
And we're looking at it with you as we're getting that view from Hash's camera and you standing there. We can see the firefighters in there. I don't know if you can see it as well as we can from this distance here, Eric, but we can see what they're up against there. And DC Fire apparently tweeted out recently that there have been no injuries. But one of the things that's pretty interesting, Ads, is this is District Dogs. We haven't seen any dogs around. Do we know anything about whether there were any dogs there at the time when all this happened?
When they tweet no injuries, I think we assume that's human injuries. But there does seem to be a considerable effort by all of those EMS folks right now inside of that building that wouldn't be there if this was just a water situation.
Yeah, it makes you wonder.
I just went over and asked one of the employees there, to your point, Leslie, and I asked her if all the dogs were okay, and I just got a no comment. We're getting a lot of concerned faces on the part of on the part of those who are wearing District Dog shirts.
Can you tell us what the business is?
They've all.
Is it a dog daycare?
It is.
Yeah, it is dog boarding. Dog
Yeah, they're
boarding.
dog boarding,
I just
and so
confirmed that it's dog boarding.
Yeah, so
Dog
what I'm
boarding, so I don't
remembering
know
is
if-
they used to have dogs that would stay there overnight. So presumably there are likely potentially dogs there in their care if they were having some at this point. Obviously, it's a very traumatic situation for a lot of people.
Do you know if all the dogs are okay?
I don't, no.
Okay, I just asked one woman, and I don't think they really want to talk. I did just ask if we know if all the dogs are okay, and I think we just gotta, no, I don't. So as we come here and we're developing an understanding of what's going on here live on the scene, I think there is some concern about whether or not there are still animals inside. Again, I want to stress that is not confirmed. I'm just telling you what I'm seeing on the faces.
And Eric, to Leslie's point, that this has flooding like this has happened at this business, maybe not to this degree in the past. I go back to the point that I brought up a second ago about those seemingly water barricades that were set up in front of the business. I mean, that didn't appear to be something that would be set up rather quickly. Set up in anticipation of some sort of weather event, or perhaps it's a semi-permanent fixture outside of the store. I wonder if at some point James could get us another shot of that after we're seeing some of these shots inside of the business here, and also wondering if anyone on the street could tell you if that's just always there.
Yeah. First of all, I think we're going to leave the visuals with what's going on inside. I think that's the most compelling. I think I can also tell you the story as I'm down here at those barricades. We'll show you them in a bit, and whether or not this is something that would be thrown up quickly. These are large barricades. They have multiple very heavy sandbags in front of them. To your point, this is not something that can get thrown up in a minute or two or three. You can see. As one of the District Dogs employees walks by, you can really see how much time this took to get up. And I'm just trying to listen in on some of the other conversations that are going on here right now.
And while you're doing that, we can
Adam,
clearly
to your point,
see how much
I think you're right.
We can clearly see how much that water has receded just in the couple of minutes that you've been standing there. But yeah, you can see, concerned looks on the faces. You can only imagine being in that position if you've got
wondering if your dog is okay, or wondering if people you know are okay. These people are on phones, they're looking through the windows, they're watching every move that the firefighters and the emergency personnel are making. And then we saw another shot where we could see down where the cars were trapped, where it looked like people were trying to maybe get to their flooded cars. So a lot of activity there this evening.
Okay, sorry guys, if you were coming to me, I'm just trying to talk to some of the bystanders live without kind of, here comes the dog, James. Hey, here's some good news right
Puppy
here.
rescue.
Oh, that's
here's
terrific. 2 dogs.
Here's some heartwarming. Oh, wow, I just got chills. They look wet and they look scared, but they look okay. Let's just hope all of the dogs inside are the same. I'm gonna try and just.
Wow.
They're looking for the owners right now.
That's a terrific sight to see.
At least we can see a couple
right now.
of them are okay, Eric. Yeah, and you can see. Look at that looks like it might be the owner of the business. There's certainly people that work there just checking to make sure the dogs are okay. And looks like maybe he's reuniting them with their owners. Oh,
yeah,
wow.
It looks like that's what we're seeing live on WUSA 9 right
Looks
now,
like
and it's. And they're obviously, those owners are obviously.
Here
there's
comes
another
more.
one coming out, a
Yeah.
couple more coming out.
Great. And you consider the stress on this business right now. You see this dog with the leash, but are they able to access leashes for these dogs that they need to get out? Are they able to access kennels to bring out? We only
Looks
have
like
no
they're
idea how many dogs are inside.
Yeah, they're literally, we're seeing this in real time as the firefighters and the rescuers are getting to these dogs, and you can see them getting them to the people who've been waiting for them, waiting for some sort of update since all of this happened. And there's got to be a lot of relief over there as each one of these dogs comes out and is reunited with their loved ones.
Relief for us, relief for everyone
And
watching.
I would just like to,
absolutely.
And if I can just pop in here, and we don't know everything that happened, but I can say right off the bat, kudos and applause and cheers for DC Fire and EMS, who knew what they were doing and knew the mission in front of them, and looks like they have succeeded in many, many cases.
Does it look like it's still active? Does it look like they're still working to rescue even more pets that are in there, or has the...
I'm going to go to a different angle than James Hash is at, so I can see a different angle into.
Just wonder if the posture of the EMS folks has changed.
Yeah, there are still. Oh, okay. So I'm looking. You're not seeing this from James's standpoint, but I'm looking into the front of the building. Here comes James, and if you go, Hash, if it's just straight back there, and my reflection is in it, there are at least two. I can see two red hats, which indicate the fire and EMS personnel. There are flashlights. So I don't think the search is over.
So they're still
going.
And I don't know.
There's another dog that just came out. Multiple dogs. Another dog just came out. Sorry, James. I think that one's already gone. But there's another dog. I think I've counted 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, maybe a half dozen dogs already that have been brought out of this dog boarding facility, as it was described to me.
Boy, they've had
so we just don't know how many.
Yeah, they've had quite a day.
I'm sorry, Les. I was just going to say we just don't know. Yeah.
And you can see, I mean, it's clear that there's still work to be done, as you see the staffers at District Dogs that are really sort of laser focused on making sure that these dogs are going to be okay and that they're reunited.
I see more dogs inside. I see more dogs inside coming out right now. There are more dogs coming out right now.
And now the challenge, now the challenge for this business is you see the gentleman there in the green shorts has been handing off these dogs to a woman. Where are they taking them if their owners are not on the scene? If they're being boarded because the owners are out of town? Now,
keep in mind, it would have been impossible.
Go ahead, Eric.
It would have been impossible. It would have been impossible for them to get here. I mean, they might have been able to,
that too,
get as close as they could, park and run. But
here comes another one.
It's blocked off.
Eric, here comes another dog right here coming out, which is.
That dog is soaked.
Each time we see them, so as we're seeing them, and we've got to remember these dogs were likely in a flooded space. Yeah. They're in an area where they were were enclosed, right? And they look very traumatized. But certainly the best news of the day here is that they're able to get to them, and they're getting them out of that water. There's another 4 of them that have just come out. 5 more have come out.
James,
6.
Yeah, here's a reunion going on right now, James. I don't know if you can get it, but I can see the tears in her eyes. And I think she was just reunited.
The best feeling.
Is this your little
dog?
Okay. She's not. I think
after
the look on her face says it all.
What she's been through. Just waiting to see if everything was going to be okay.
Not knowing. Yeah, but not knowing.
Yeah,
I think we've counted roughly a dozen dogs come out of there right now.
Yeah, and they keep coming. There's another little one. There's another little one. And again, we don't know if these are the owners or just people who are trying to support these dogs to get them into a spot where, and maybe I can ask this woman. I was just going to see. I wanted to ask you, are you a dog? Okay, a lot of people kind of not in the mood to talk right now. I think maybe understandably and rightfully focused on the dogs themselves, but
Surely. This community has really come together around District Dogs because they've been through this before. The dogs have been through this situation before, and yet they continue to come back. You just really hope that whatever the construction remedy is for some of this helps so that we're not in this situation over and over again. And you got to wonder if you're the owner of District Dogs, if you're going to want to keep having to undergo this. But when you see these little dogs come out, I mean, this is the best possible outcome after a really awful, awful day there.
Yeah, and I can just describe to you what I'm seeing, and I'm seeing conversations between that gentleman in the District Dog shirt and many of the people who are carrying these dogs away, and they're intense conversations and they're emotional conversations. And with the reporting and IFB in my ear, it's hard to clearly really hear exactly what is being said back and forth. I think the biggest and most important thing is that every dog parent who walks away with their dog in their arms right now knows that there's a lot of questions maybe moving forward, but certainly for now, if you're walking away with your dog scared, wet, but in still barking and in one piece, then that's the most important thing. And there are more dogs coming out.
And
this is one of the most
really to DC EMS
remarkable
and fire
scenes.
Because I don't think you can imagine a training situation where this is something that they go through, right? Having to go into an enclosed, tight, flooded space to rescue as many dogs as you can.
There's another one. He's happy to come out of there.
And they're doing
too.
an amazing job. I mean, we've got at least a dozen or so dogs that have come out so far, Eric. And we just hope and pray for the best for all of the dogs that might still be
for all
inside.
of them. We just don't know how. Longo. We just don't know how far back they go. Here's 2 more coming out, 3 more coming out. I wish I had kept a count, but we have to be over 2 dozen. We just have to be at this point.
Yeah, it looks like it. A lot of people who board their dogs are away on vacation. So, you've got to believe that there's some folks who may be hearing about this who aren't here right now and certainly wondering about their dogs. But boy, this has got to be relieving in a lot of ways for folks who use this service.
James, let's go this way because it looks like there's a bit of I don't know. We're not going to lose the signal in here, are we?
Possibly.
Yeah, we may lose the signal. Let me. All right, don't lose the signal. Let me just peek in here and see what's going on, because it seems a lot of the staff members. So it looks like there is a bike storage room, in this garage here, and it looks like a lot of the dogs are just being temporarily put into this bike storage room for safety. I'm seeing a lot of the same faces that are helping, whether they're associated or just concerned neighbors, helping bring these dogs into this bike storage room. So I think
I'm going to say it's the same people
that's all I was going to say.
That's bringing them back and forth, but then there's a group of people who haven't moved that are there behind that crime scene tape who were just waiting, hoping, and praying that the next dog around the corner is theirs.
And I'm watching them, Eric, too, because some of the people coming out don't have shoes on. And so it could be that some of these people were actually inside the building as well. And just when we think about flash floods and how fast the waters rise on the roads, they're rising that fast in this building, too. So they've got to make split-second decisions about how to get the dogs to safety and how to get themselves to safety.
Now, I believe I've just been here for a minute. I'm seeing the same faces. I'm seeing the same faces that are volunteering. I'm seeing new faces that are walking up very concerned. And let's just try to politely ask here, over here.
While you're walking, we'll just rremind people
Guys,
that
do you know how your dog is? Are you still waiting, or do you have any information at all? What's your dog's name?
I know it's not.
So there are definitely still people who still don't know the answer. I think that's that's all we know, is that some of these faces are bystanders and volunteers who are doing what they can to team together and get every dog to safety. And then I think we do have some owners who are still waiting and still wondering and still hoping and praying.
Yeah, I just, we're really thinking about the dogs and the folks that worked at District Dogs and all the family members, like the ones you just talked to, who are so anxious and so nervous, waiting to find out about their fur babies, their loved ones. As we all know, if you have a dog, they are part of your family, and you just can't even imagine something scary happening to them. But you think about what they've had to endure for the past, 30, 40 minutes or so. And as these dogs continue to come out, I mean, it's really the best thing you can see. And certainly for the people that you just talked to, they're laser focused on making sure that they find their loved one.
I think they just found,
Oh,
I think
wow.
that reunion just happened.
That's amazing.
And the look of concern on his
And I
face
think that's,
when he came to the scene and he was there just waiting and wondering and watching.
There's this guy. Wow.
Yeah, I think that is
And
the
we
type
just keep
of
seeing more and more
reunion
come
that
out. Yeah.
in the background, Les, you're right. And some run, now one just got loose. One just got loose, so we're all going to try to get him. Hey, buddy.
Catch
Hey,
him.
buddy. Hey, buddy.
Oh, they're
Hey, buddy.
scared.
Well, at least they can
well, he
funnel them
knows
right
where he's
into
going.
where he's
So
going.
scared.
He's a good dog. He knows
We just
where
have to
he's
make sure.
going.
We'll just have to make sure, right? We'll just make sure no cars come in here.
Yeah.
I think some of the volunteers, though, are going to help that dog.
Yeah, if you're just joining
Guys, I know
us.
it's a happy ending. Anything you can say? Well, I'm glad you had a happy ending.
Hey, Eric, I'm just resetting for
All right,
folks who may be joining us right now. This is District Dogs here, which is the scene of where these flash floods have really made a mess of the business. These dogs were being boarded here, and rescuers have been bringing them out one by the dozens now, it looks like we've counted. And you can see the faces of people who've been waiting to see if their fur babies come out, or some of these people may be volunteers, some of them may be people who work at District Dogs. And sadly, they've been through this over and over again because of the propensity for things to flood there. There's another dog coming out. They've had quite an ordeal. But boy, this is the best moment of all, really, when we can see them continuing to come out.
Well, and Les and Longo, you've been around the city, and you know this is an area that has really exploded over the last 5 years and really in the last year. So a lot of questions about, just as you said, you know, the District Dogs and the location. But for right now, a lot of happy reunions down here in Rhode Island Avenue. Back to you.
Yeah,
Hey,
Eric.
I'm glad you're coming back to us for a second, and as the dogs come out. Is your mic on, Raphael? Hey, Rafa, you reported on District Dogs like a year ago when this happened.
Yeah, last August at least 3 times that they had a similar situation. We were actually out there on August 10th.
All right, we don't have your mic just yet.
We're going to work on that. But Raphael was out there August 10th of last year when this business had flooded 3 times previously and had these in less than a month, right? That this occurred.
That's right.
Is your mic on now? Can we hear Raphael? No mic. Okay. All right. All right, we're going to get you in at the top of the 6th, Raphael, in just a moment. We're going to reset things. So if you're just joining us, we've been covering dogs being rescued from the District Dogs here in Northeast DC. We're going to pause for just 1 second, and we'll get right into the news at 6.
WUSA 9 Weather Watch Alert is sponsored by Morgan & Morgan.
All right, so this is breaking right now. This is the moment when several dogs were rescued from a flooded business, District Dogs along Rhode Island Avenue. This is in Northeast, and what a relief for people who've been waiting anxiously outside this building in the past hour. We've seen dozens of them come out. Now, we're still under a weather watch alert for strong storms, and in the past 2 hours, we've seen several tornado warnings in Arlington and Fairfax and in parts of Alexandria, also in parts of Charles County, Maryland. They have all been lifted, but clearly this flash flooding packed a punch. It packed it fast. Several people had to be rescued from flash floods in the area as well. And our Eric Flack has been live on the scene since the moment we learned about all of this. Eric, you've been standing there, you've been watching, you've been trying to talk to people who've just been nervous and so worried about their beloved fur babies there. Tell us what you're seeing right now.
Yeah, as you said, we're resetting the scene. We are on Rhode Island Avenue in Northeast, where this area, when we arrived on the scene, was flooded so badly. Those vehicles behind me were completely stranded. We showed up on this scene reacting to water rescues actively in progress with DC Fire and EMS. Once they got those water rescues, then we see this. We see emotional owners carrying their dogs away after what became, at this point, the biggest scare. After they got all the people inside the cars situated, DC Fire and EMS quickly learned that this District Dogs location, a dog boarding facility, had dogs inside of it. The water, at least according to the watermarks we saw, probably 5-6 feet high. The room where I think the dogs were boarded, it appeared were a little bit higher ground. We were watching inside, and you could see that they were pulling dogs out of that back of that facility. They pulled 1 out, they pulled 2 out, they pulled 4 out, they pulled 10 out. the dogs kept coming. As traffic is blocked here, we quickly realized that a lot of the owners of these dogs, while they might know what was going on, couldn't get here. So we had DC Fire and EMS personnel wading into situations that were trying at best and just pulling dogs out one by one, handing them off to what appear to be volunteers who were shuttling these wet and shivering and cold but safe dogs up to a makeshift boarding facility inside that garage that's right here outside the Alamo Draft House in Northeast DC. We are still have no confirmation about whether every single dog inside of this facility has been safely brought out. We have seen a lot of emotional reunions with dog owners who sat here for minutes and longer wondering, would their little fur baby be brought out of this facility in one piece and okay? And we have seen countless reunions. Everybody so overcome with emotion that they really felt like they could not talk, at least to us, which is completely understandable. We do see DC Fire and EMS updating some neighbors right now. I can't take out my AirPods, my earpieces to listen in, because if so, I'll kind of lose my connection to you. We'll obviously get another update, an official update here very soon, but we can tell you the heroes of DC Fire EMS who went in and rescued what has to number 24 dogs or more, the countless volunteers who jumped in to try and all work together along with the district dogs, personnel and employees who you could see the concerned look on their faces, trying to get as many of those dogs to safety. As we have reported, and our Rafael Sanchez Cruz has reported, this area has had an unfortunate issue with flooding at this district dogs location before, and we'll get into that later, and there will be questions to be asked. Adam Longo talked about these barricades that were set up with sandbags, almost anticipating issues. And keep in mind, flash flooding happens very, very quickly. In the time we got here, the water was right there. Within minutes, the water was all but gone. And so it does, and again, we have no confirmation of this, but it seems to appear that some preparations were made anticipating the potential for a situation like this, but we're going to have to continue to confirm those facts. But obviously these barricades were just no match for the height of the flash flooding down here at 600 Rhode Island Avenue Northeast, where many cars. Yeah, James.
You can see the watermark on the wall by the fire alarm box there.
Okay, that's a great point. So if you're wondering how high the water was inside this business, it's the highest point, which is discolored on that wall on the white. So where that discoloration stops, as high as it was, that's how high the water was at some point. Now, thankfully, we did look inside. It did appear that the main dog boarding facility was set back in this business and was a little bit higher up, which is why I think we saw so many happy reunions and so many shivering but scared but okay dogs being pulled out. But yet still so much more to confirm, so much more to learn. The one thing I think we're all wondering and hoping for, guys, did they get every dog out of here okay?
I mean, it has been quite a traumatic day for everybody involved, and as we thank all of the emergency personnel and first responders, we also got to thank the people that work at District Dogs and all those volunteers who have come up and understandably didn't want to talk, wanted to be in the moment, fixated on what we couldn't see and what we didn't know at the time, which was there were dozens of dogs in there that needed to get to safety, and we don't want to forget about that as well. Flack and Hash, thank you for your excellent pictures and reporting there. Our Rafael Sanchez Cruz joins us now here in the studio. And Rafa, when I was referencing the fact that this business had flooded 3 times in a month last year, this was part of your reporting.
Almost to the year. I mean,
Almost
we're talking
to the
about
year.
August 10th, and we were having the same conversation. We were actually out there talking to Jacob Hensley then about his frustrations as a business owner.
And we saw him out there. He was the one wearing the green shorts
and the hat, and obviously he was trying to get those dogs to their owners, as he was doing last year. And we were actually there when Councilmember McDuffie did a tour of the facilities expressing his frustration as well as to what is going on. And the issue here is that he was frustrated that the DC Water's Clean Rivers project, which is billions of dollars that have been invested to help with flooding issues and sewer issues in the district, is really not having the effects that they expected, especially in areas like this in Northeast DC. Now, I want to put things into perspective. You're probably wondering, why is this happening time and time again? Last time we were there, they basically explained it to us, saying that before this building was up, that area where District Dogs is now was actually a wall. There was no actual businesses there. So now they're getting the brunt of the issues having a business like District Dogs there, and they were saying there was very little that they could do. In the meantime, what can they do for people like Jacob and for those people dropping off their dogs? Set up those barriers that we saw. We were talking about them over and over again, how the city is prepping up the area with those orange barriers or red barriers and those sandbags as a way to help with the situation, but definitely not a permanent solution. And again, a year later, we're still having the same conversation with those billions of dollars invested and still having the same consequences and the same, I mean, almost tragedy, with these dog owners and these dogs and with Jacob as well.
Well, you have to wonder whether it makes sense for this business to stay in this location, right? Because it's not just an inconvenience, right? We're talking about the lives of dogs, we're talking about the lives of people, we're talking about the rescuers who go out there, in addition to all of the people who got caught in that area where their cars were flooded.
And I want to make this a very important point, Leslie, because last time I was out there, we were obviously seeing the effects of those dogs, and last year we were doing coverage on it, but there's actually a church right across the street. I mean,
that we can't really see.
That we can't really see, but time and time again they said, you're thinking about it now because you heard about the dogs, but we've been dealing with this for decades and no one paid attention. And they told me that same day, there would be times where it would flood and we couldn't leave the church because we had to wait it out. So now we're just drawing attention again because those businesses exist in that bottom portion of that building. And that's why we're seeing those issues. But they're saying this is something we've been dealing with for decades, and we want to see those government officials paying as much attention to our church, to those residents in that same area, especially in that part of Northeast.
It seems there needs to be a broader conversation about infrastructure in general, right? Because you do have businesses there and churches and people who drive through there and people who live over there.
And it's just by a metro
who have had to
station.
Deal with this, right? Over and over again. If you're taking the metro or if you're coming out and you don't know that this is happening, obviously you get the warnings from us, we tell you, but as it says, flash warning happens in a flash. So it's a really fast process. Let's get back to Eric Flack for a second, who's been covering this for us and these happy reunions, and we've been seeing all of these rescues happen in real time. Flack, what's the perspective you're getting now?
I don't want to read too much without official confirmation. I'm just going to pass along that there are still a couple of what appear to be very distraught owners, as well as a couple of distraught employees coming out of District Dogs right now. So we'll just have to see what all that indicates. I don't think it's a time to put a mic in anybody's face right now, but I can tell you there's at least one woman here with a phone to her ear, wiping tears away. You can see some of the emotion there.
We can only surmise that this is not the best outcome that folks are hearing about here. And the thing that people worry
we do want to keep in
mind.
We do want to keep in mind. All the dogs. For those who haven't been with us, dozens of dogs brought out safely, but we just don't know if they all made it out. That's all I wanted to mention, Les.
Yeah, thank you for letting us know that, and we'll continue to wait to find out whether we're talking about dogs or what we're discussing here, obviously. Rafa, as you saw some of the employees coming out, there was a moment last year where some of them wanted to just leave.
Right, they were saying that it was too much responsibility to deal with these emergency situations that they felt they weren't trained in, and all of a sudden having to respond. And again, once is enough, but 3 times last year, and then if some of those people are still there, I mean, again, for the consecutive year, it's a lot for them to deal with.
It could be a very triggering situation for sure, and understandably. All right, we're going to take a quick break, and we're going to come back with more on this reporting on the flooding on Rhode Island Avenue and the dogs rescued from the District Dogs business. We'll be right back. where several dogs have been rescued. You're looking at some video right here where rescuers were cuddling and trying to make the dogs comfortable after this whole traumatic experience. What else are you seeing and learning right now?
Come on up.
Yeah, Les, we do know that we're going to have a briefing from fire officials who are just over there at about 6:30. Those fire officials gathering. I just went to the assistant chief, asked him when he was going to be prepared. He said he was still gathering information, if that gives you an idea about how fluid a situation this is. Just to recap, just immense flash flooding down here at 600 northeast block of Rhode Island Avenue, which is right outside the Alamo Draft House and Cinema in this rapidly growing area, if you know it. This District Dogs location, a dog boarding facility, had barricades set up in front of it because of past flooding issues, particularly past flash flooding issues. They obviously worried that something was coming. What ended up coming was more than these barricades or these doors could handle. We've seen dozens and dozens of safely scared. Go ahead.
Go ahead, please continue.
Okay, I was just going to say we've seen dozens upon dozens. We don't know the exact count of dogs safely brought out of these front doors, wet, shivering, cold, but okay. In fact, if you know a dog, we saw these volunteers skipping up the road with them as soon as they're out there running, just trying to encourage them to forget what they've just been through. Unfortunately, we do have a couple of people who are still waiting with concerned looks on their faces. That is one woman who has had a concerned look on her face for some time, talking to the owner of District Dogs or the operator. We're going to obviously give them some space because there has been concern on that young woman's face for some time. We have seen a number of despondent looks on some of the District Dogs employees who came out of this boarding facility. And keep in mind, this is even after we saw dozens of successful rescues. So we are just worried at this point about what all that means. We are still waiting for confirmation. And again, we're going to have an update from one of the DC fire officials down here on scene at about 6:30. Obviously, there is a lot to learn. Our own reporting has shown that District Dogs has had a location issue down here with the flooding. A lot of frustration, as reported by Rafael Sanchez Cruz, about frustration with city programs that cost tons of money that have not been fixing this flash flooding issue like it was supposed to. Back to you.
All right, Guy, we'll of course be waiting for that briefing at 6:30 and hoping against hope that means that they're going to get to whatever last dogs may be inside there, and we'll be streaming that on WUSA 9+ as well. But we come back now, Rafa, because so people see the business, right, located there, but they don't realize that it's actually in an incline, like a dip.
Right. So it's
right?
I would describe it like a basement kind of style unit to that bottom portion of that building. So we actually toured it last year and were able to be, it's a large facility. So they obviously try to get those dogs towards the back away from those doors. But it's still a very difficult situation. What we were talking was that sewage issue is constantly an issue and it overwhelms that area.
And it doesn't have to be a lot of water to overwhelm it.
We just heard Topper saying it was 2 inches, which doesn't mean a lot to most people, but it overwhelms that area time and time again. And we see situations like this. I mean, that line that we just keep going to, it was almost to that person's shoulder blade.
Yeah.
And as you can imagine, their job is to get those dogs towards the back and hope for the best until it's cleared out. And fortunately, it does clear out quickly, but those minutes of stress and anxiety and panic.
For everybody there, for everybody, absolutely. And we're back now on WUSA 9+. I'm Leslie Foster, of course, following what has happened after this flash flooding and the situation specifically around Rhode Island Avenue at the District Dogs location. We'll go right to some video. We've been covering this through the evening, showing you the agonizing moments where dogs were being rescued from that business. This is the backside of that business where there is a bike store that has become a sort of warehousing area for all of the dogs that were taken and rescued from District Dogs. Now, we can see the shot panning over away from this U-Haul. On the other side of the U-Haul is the actual District Dogs store, which has not been a stranger to situations with flooding there. Just last year, it flooded 3 times in 1 month. Now, what we see now are people who are standing with dogs. It's not clear right now whether these are volunteers, whether these are owners. You and I are seeing this video together at the very same time. But you can see there is crime scene tape over in the area, caution tape, some barriers there, barriers that really are going to be part of the questioning of how this happened today, where a run-of-the-mill storm in August caused a near tragic situation at the District Dogs. We saw at least a couple dozen dogs taken from this particular business, but we also witnessed a moment which appeared to show some very sad faces and people in tears. So we're waiting for an update that is supposed to take place at any moment now from DC Fire and EMS, where they give us some updates about what happened. First, the happy part, right? This is a rescuer who is bringing out some of the very first dogs we saw when people were really around this area agonizing and nervous, filled with anxiety, wondering about the dogs that were inside. District Dogs is a dog boarding location. They also have some dog daycare services there. So if you are a dog owner, you know that many times you board the dog when you're out of town or you're not in the area. So there is a good chance that there may be some other families who are wondering about their fur babies and hearing about this from afar. These are some dogs that were removed from the business at the height of all of this. So what we know is it started raining, right? There was a storm here. Topper and Michaela had been telling us about it. And this is what it looked like when the flash floods started to form pretty quickly around this business. You see those cones, there were barriers there, but even the barriers are buried by the water at some point. Topper mentioned there may have been a little over 2 inches of water, but that doesn't even tell you about the trauma that was likely happening in that business at the time, because as we looked at the outside of the business and we looked at where the watermark was, that was really even up to the shoulders of people that may have been in there or rescuers at the time. This is giving you a sense of what it was like on the outside, but we have no idea of the anxiety and the fear that was going on inside that building. So we come back out now and we see the water has receded, but it does not tell the story of those awful moments inside this business where people who work there agonized about the safety of the dogs in their care. If you look to the far left of your screen, you can see there were barriers there. You can see folks who worked at District Dogs coming out of that space, and just to the back of the business is where the dogs that were rescued were taken to be held, probably to be cuddled, to possibly be reunited with their loved ones. So here we are on this August evening after what was, again, a run-of-the-mill kind of storms we get here in August in this area, severe weather, but no tornado issue in this particular area. And we are all back here at the end of this wondering about the moments in between this story, the agonizing moments for the people who worked at District Dogs, who had to make decisions, split-second decisions about their own safety, about the safety of the dogs in their care. And then there are the questions about what caused all of this and the infrastructure issues. I'm going to bring in my colleague, Rafael Sanchez Cruz, because, Rafa, you've been covering this business for some time. About a year to the day, last year, this business flooded 3 times in 1 month, 3 times having to go through this very situation. And yet they're here today again.
Right. It prompted a visit from, officials from across the district. We're talking water officials. We're talking from Council Member McDuffie, who was touring the business and telling the owner, Jacob Hensley, what's going on? What are you facing? And again, what we're talking about is that this building that has apartments on top has now this business portion at the bottom, right? They were saying that before what was there was a wall. So ideally, that those businesses would not be there, and that's what's leading to this flooding that we're seeing time and time again. When we had the conversation last year, we were talking about the type of flood that you only see once every 100 years. This was not it.
This was not that.
This was not it. And in the meantime, they said they were going to install those barriers, but you can't see those barriers in those images that you're seeing on your screen right now. And that was just a temporary solution. We're a year out. We haven't seen those changes. And we were talking again about this project that's been invested billions of dollars and where it was going to actually help the sewer drainage to avoid situations like this, especially in this area. We're talking where there's a tunnel, there's public transportation nearby, now there's a residential area, and this business portion that's being affected time and time again. And you can see this is from last year.
That was from August of last year.
Of last year. And you can see how the business is actually sunken in a little bit down more. So that water rushes down from the doors. And actually, our meteorologist, Michaela, was asking us, because she saw those dogs that were just completely wet, and was asking if the water was coming down. No, it all comes down from that front door portion and just rushes in all the way into the back of the business, which is actually really big. We were able to tour it last year as they had fans to kind of air it out and fix all the damages caused by the floods. However, again, we're seeing the situation time and time again. I think it's important to follow up as to where it's going and having that conversation of what's to be done. I was actually on social media right now, and some elected commissioners are having the conversation of, should that business be there? Do they plan to leave? And residents in the area saying the exact same thing. People that live above District Dog saying, we weren't expecting that. We feel bad for the owner. We feel bad for the employees. And of course, we feel bad for these dog owners and these dogs, right? These family members that went through this traumatic situation. We saw that dog running away, looked scared, and they had to rush and grab him. And also, we saw the owner, embrace one of his employees as he was in tears. And again, the conversation that we had last year was, they were telling me, we're not trained to do this. We're trained to take care of dogs. We're trained of other types of emergency situations, but nothing like water rushing into your business and trying to save yourself, as well as these dozens of dogs that are under your care as you're trying to figure out what's going on.
We were watching in real time as the first responders were in there and gave us a glimpse of what they were dealing with. And at the point that we could see a little bit inside District Dogs, the water looked to be up to the thighs of some people, and then, the knees of some folks. So they've got to wade through this big location. You've toured it. They've got to get to the dogs. They've got to pluck them from the water or from wherever they are. They may be scared, so they may not want to come out immediately. This was a big operation here to get these dogs to safety.
Yeah, and I think when we see the images, we think that we would know how to act. In the conversation we were having last time, as most people, you don't know what's going on. It all happens so quickly. We can see it there. People do not know, one, what they're going to do to get out and how long it's going to last. And that was the conversation. Again, the water actually clears out relatively quickly. However, those moments of panic, I just don't think we can describe them unless you're inside and you're thinking of those dogs and yourself at that time. And again, I want to mention that church right across the street that's been dealing with the same issue. Their parking was completely flooded, and they said this is something that we've been dealing with for decades. And the only reason that they felt that it was getting attention was because the dogs were being affected. And who doesn't love a dog, right? But again, they're saying the infrastructure in this area has been a constant issue. And actually, the businesses across the street, same situation. I've been reporting on the other side of the street with the exact same struggle, and those drivers being caught up in those floods and just unable to get out and relying on DC rescuers to be there like they were today. Yeah,
and they had to be there today. There was a point before we actually knew what was happening with District Dogs where all we could see were, 3 or 4 cars that were trapped in those flood waters. We didn't see any people there, so clearly rescuers were able to get to them. Those cars are a total loss at this point now. But I want to get back to something. So what was being built was supposed to be called the Northeast Boundary Tunnel. It was supposed to be done in March of 2023. All these resources from the city going into this effort in the hopes of keeping what we saw happen today from happening again. Right. So all this money goes into this, and it didn't work because it's not complete.
Well, and part of the conversation that they were having last year was that we're seeing these types of scenarios more and more often. Again, I think now in DC we've kind of normalized it a bit, but they're saying we just have not seen this amount of rain consistently, and that was part of the conversation of how do we advance this, right? Something that was approved years ago, and now we're seeing these changes happen. And again, I keep emphasizing the conversation that they had with the owner last year that those businesses were not there. It was a wall. So they didn't have this constant issue of residents complaining about flooding because it was water just hitting against the wall. Now we have businesses, now we have dogs, now we have stories, we have employees. And that's why we're getting these testimonies that perhaps they need to reevaluate having businesses there. Maybe it was a mistake.
Maybe you shouldn't permit these businesses to be in locations where they are flood prone and where the most heartbreaking thing can happen in a nanosecond when there's a flash flood. And if you can't get to everybody, whether it's a human or a dog, it's a significant loss. We don't know what we're going to hear yet from fire officials, but our colleague Eric Flack and James Hash have been down there the whole time. Eric, I think that you're there, and I think we might be able to talk to you. Is that right?
Hey, I'm here, Les. Over my shoulder, if you can hear me, fire officials are gathering right now as they prepare for a news conference to update us on exactly what happened here. I can tell you that they've been on the scene here for about a half hour, conferring with each other, with the district dogs ownership, with the leadership here with DC Fire and EMS, and the men and women who were on the scene and so bravely charged into that business and carried out, dog after dog to safety. I can tell you the questions that are on my mind first and foremost is, how many dogs did they bring out? Did any dogs not make it out? We did see a number of emotional faces, both on the face of some of the people who appeared to be owners and really some of the district dog employees, as well as my buddy James points out, the faces on some of the firefighters and the EMS workers, and there were DC Metro Police here as well, and there was really emotion on everybody's face near the end. Again, at the beginning there was a lot of joy because it was just a parade of dogs being successfully brought out, wet, cold, shivering, but okay, and volunteers were taking them and rushing them up the street to the garage where they made kind of a makeshift shelter, and then right at the end there seemed to be some concern as we were talking about earlier, the location that the dogs are in, and I think the assistant, I believe, fire chief is heading over right now to give us this briefing, but the location that the dogs were in is set back a little bit. We're on sticks. Can we just move it a little bit closer? Just split the difference a little bit. Thank you so much. We're going to get a live update here from fire officials as they walk over.
Where's a good spot here?
Right here.
Everybody ready? Hi, I'm John Donnelly, Chief of DC Fire and EMS. This evening, right as the rainstorm began, the units from 12 Engine, which are located behind us at 5th and Rhode Island, noticed a rapid buildup of water underneath the Rhode Island Avenue Railroad Bridge here. They immediately self-dispatched down to the scene, called for additional assistance from our rescue teams, and started helping people out of the water. And right away, 12 Engine got people from a car that was stranded and other people whose cars, and we have up to 5 cars and a truck that were under the bridge, disabled in the water, and the water's rising rapidly. This is happening over a few minutes. The rescue boats got here and evacuated 2 more people, and the rest of the people were self-evacuating through the water on their own. It's a very dangerous situation. Over those few minutes, the water raised 6 feet roughly to the middle of the doors, or above the middle of the doors on district dogs behind us, and then one of the walls gave in and district dogs flooded. And as a result of that, we've had some fatalities. for the dogs, and the fire department assisted the district dogs employees in rescuing 20 additional dogs and getting the people that worked at district dogs out of the building safely. Some of them have been assessed for injuries, and we're still assessing that. Nobody has been transported from the scene, and overall today, over 20 people were helped out of the water by district fire and EMS from this location.
Can you talk about the number of dogs that unfortunately did not make it out, as well as the emotion we saw on the faces of both the employees, but even your own men and women here on the scene?
So instead of giving a number, I'd like to just wait. So the district dogs is contacting the families involved with those dogs, but the emotion is it's hard to watch. It's unbearable. This is losing a member of your family or being scared that you did. And, we've all been through or seen that in our communities. It's a terrible thing.
Can you verify it's more than one? And can you also say which wall was it that collapsed here?
There's a front wall where the windows came in, and then it pushed the water it let all the water into the building that way.
Multiple dogs?
Yeah, multiple dogs. I'm sorry. I forgot the first part of the question. Multiple
Chief,
dogs.
there's a history here on Rhode Island Avenue. This location has put up some barricades because it's been flooded before. They have complained, as have others along this route, that public programs to alleviate flooding have not been successul. So I'd just like you to address, I heard your own people on the scanner on the way down here saying, it happened again. This happens all the time. Does this happen all the time, and why can't we get it to stop?
So I've never seen anything like this here, and I'm unaware of the particulars with this building. I do see some walls up. I'm not sure what those are. So I think that's going to have to come out as we look at it over more time. I just don't have that answer today.
The flooding program in general, though, I mean, is it failing?
So I think that our what's the bypass tunnel called that's being built everywhere, we're seeing that work as it comes online. It's my understanding it's not online in this area, but we're digging hundreds, probably close to 100 miles of tunnels under the city right now, and that's going on all over. I know it's worked in other areas, and I'm sure once it gets online here, it'll work. DC Water is working extremely hard on that. You had a question about?
Yes, sir. Can you just walk us through what went into that rescue? We saw firefighters knocking through the drywall as they sort of pulled out some of those pets earlier.
Yeah. So the firefighters here at the command post observed people swimming out of the building, coming out of the door. To them, it appeared they were in trouble. They immediately deployed their resources. The firefighters came in and helped the employees get through. Some of the easier ways to do it were to go through drywall. They did that. There's significant damage in there, so they had to work in that. It's a very hazardous environment with electricity, with power, with disentanglement things. So it's very hard and a rough situation to work in.
And about how many employees were trapped inside?
I believe 7, although there may have been more people, including families. We overall on the site, we helped about 20, which I think puts about 10 people in district dogs.
Chief, I just want to make sure I understand. So you're saying, to your knowledge, you've never heard of severe flooding issues here?
So I've never heard of severe flooding issues, me personally, at district dogs. I'm aware that we have some flooding here.
The owner was talking to another employee saying this is not our fault. They're going to say it's our fault and it's not our fault. What's your message?
So I don't know how it could be their fault.
Will there be any sort of investigation? Is this warrant one?
So absolutely. I would say we're going to look at this, figure out what happened. We'll work with DC Water and all the relevant authorities and figure out what's going on here.
Now, I did talk to one woman who got her dog and said she was watching on the webcam as the employees inside were able to rescue a number of the dogs and can you talk a bit to that and your reaction to their actions in there?
I think the district dogs employees were heroes. Absolutely.
We see those red barriers up there, this place always floods. Something isn't really working. What does the city need to do to make sure that you're able to keep people and dogs safe?
So we'll have to figure that out in the after action. That's not my area of expertise. So,
sir, where do we go from here? You mentioned this will be investigated. Who's taking over, and what are some of those answers you're looking for?
So at this point, I don't have that. I imagine HCMA generally leads our after-action reviews, and we'll be talking to Director Rodriguez and the city administrator, and the city administrator is definitely on top of this.
Just to confirm, how many people were rescued from their cars and under the bridge?
Overall, 20 people were assisted. Some of them helped themselves out, but there are 20 people in the water affected by this.
And were any?
I'm going to have to go ahead.
Were any in peril?
Oh, absolutely.
Will we get another update once you?
I don't think so tonight. I'm not going to have any new information.
Final words to the community.
Keep your families affected by this today in your thoughts and prayers, and be careful out there. Don't drive into standing water.
Thanks, Chief.
So there you have it. So we just got an update.
So that was the DC Fire Chief giving us a rather unfortunate and sobering update that despite the fact that many dogs were successfully rescued and brought back to their owners, and we can imagine safe and getting warm tonight, that an unknown number of dogs, a number that the chief didn't want to put out there in the public right now because the owners here are still notifying family, they did not make it out. So obviously a lot of heavy hearts down here. We saw the joy, and now we're experiencing some of the grief, and sometimes the grief is worse than the joy, and that kind of seems like this is one of those deals. So Les, back to you.
It's heartbreaking. It's heartbreaking, and I think we started to think that this might have happened when we saw what we saw in real time, when you showed us, the district dogs, employees comforting themselves, but only after listening to the chief did we get a more fulsome picture of what they endured in there. He talked about district dog employees swimming out of the building, that the water rose 6 feet. So we're talking about 2 inches of water that rose 6 feet into that building. I can't even imagine what that was like for the employees in there and for the dogs that were trapped and potentially drowning because of what was happening in minutes in that building.
And that collapse wall he mentioned, that was new to me as well. The fact that the water was so high, that the conditions so overpowering that a wall actually collapsed. So obviously the emotion that we saw on the outside of this dog boarding facility is likely nothing compared to the emotion and the shock and the horror and the anguish that was going on inside in the middle of this when we showed up on the scene. And we're just thinking about everybody who's associated with this, the employees, the families, the DC Fire and EMS who continue to be here on the scene, somewhat consoling each other, the neighbors that came running to help. It was unfortunate, and we'll just kind of focus on the positive, while at the same time we ask these tough questions about why it happened again and why can't we stop it, especially along this corridor down here.
Yeah, and the tragedy is that this had to happen for there to potentially be the real urgency around this issue now. Now the very people who the chief called heroes have to make the most painstaking calls to the people who have entrusted their family members in their care. And listen, it bears repeating here that the firefighters and the first responders, they are heroes. They train for this every day. But the people who care for these dogs, this is not what they are not trained to endure this kind of thing, to care for dogs. And yet here they were yet again, having to spring into action. Having to overcome their own fears to try to save the dogs and themselves in a lot of ways.
Yeah, and Les, and you think about it, the people who work in facilities like this, dog boarding facilities, and work with animals, they do it because they love it. They likely don't do it for the paycheck. They do it because they have a passion for the animals, and because they hope they can bring a little joy, and maybe the dogs or the animals bring joy to them. I mean, you are reminded that there were people, two-legged people, involved in this as well, and those cars remain stranded, and we now have the number 20 different people under that underpass who had to escape floodwaters. Some of them did it on their own, under their own power, through rushing floodwaters, flash floodwaters, which the fire chief said is extremely dangerous, and some needed the assistance of DC Fire and EMS rescue workers in boats. When we arrived on the scene here, there were DC Fire and EMS paddling down Rhode Island Avenue to rescue people in those cars. And, he said those people were in fact in peril. Many of those people were in fact in peril. And if it weren't for the brave actions of DC Fire and EMS, this entire situation could have been so much worse. But, a lot of questions need to be asked. And the chief kind of, He didn't sidestep, he just didn't have a lot to say about one of the biggest issues that needs to be addressed, which is that District Dogs has flooded before. They had the barricades up. Rafael Sanchez Cruz and WUSA 9 has reported on it. I was here 2 years ago on the northwest side of Rhode Island Avenue where this same scene unfolded. It was in a residential area, and there was a lot of rescues then. And back then the neighbors were saying this program the city has to fix this is not working. Less answers we need about why this program isn't working.
We sure do, and people are tired of waiting for them, and it is so sad that it has come to this, where we are still trying to get answers after these tragic losses and near tragedies too today. All right, Eric, thank you to you and to James Hash for your work down there. We're going to continue to follow this story, obviously, and we'll have more on WUSA 9 News at 11 and online, WUSA9.com.